From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be heard on shortwave broadcast through the shortwave facilities of the United States Agency for Global Media or Voice of America on the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. I'm your host, Leo Magpayo, and this is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is urging the Senate to immediately resume its sessions, warning that the chamber's ongoing impasse is delaying critical legislation needed to confront the emerging global oil crisis. President Marcos said lawmakers must act on measures that would help cushion Filipinos from rising fuel prices, including a possible supplemental budget and amendments to existing laws identified during a recent Uplift Committee meeting. He stressed that these actions are essential to delivering timely assistance to the public as global oil markets continue to destabilize. The president also questioned the Senate's decision to cancel sessions for 2 straight days following the arrest of Senator Jinggoy Estrada on plunder and graft charges linked to flood control anomalies. President Marcos expressed concern that recent events have thrown the Senate into disarray, undermining its leadership and halting essential legislative work at a time when stability is urgently needed. The chief executive emphasized that while the executive and judiciary continue to function, the Senate's paralysis threatens the government's ability to respond to the oil crisis and maintain public confidence. The Senate has not held sessions since Monday after members of the majority bloc, led by Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano, skipped attendance following Estrada's arrest.
Get back to work. Get back to work because it's important. Ang dami natin kailangan gawin. Look, we had a meeting sa Uplift Committee and marami tayong kailangan pagawa sa mga batas like we were thinking may baka magka-supplemental budget, baka amyendahan namin ang mga ibang batas. Ito ay kailangan para makapagbigay tayo ng tulong sa taong bayan dahil nga sa oil crisis. Kung walang session, hindi ko nga maintindihan dahil ang pagkaintindi ko is that ang rules, nag-congressman naman ako, nag-senador din ako. Ang rules dyan, bago ka mag-cancel ng session, you have to inform the other house 3 days before you cancel a session. And there has to be a very good reason for canceling a session. I don't think na ihahatid mo ang isang senador para pumunta kung saan siya pupunta. Hindi yata sapat na dahilan yan para i-cancel ang isang session. Isang session lang yun. Ngayon, kanselado na naman ang isang session. Hindi ko nga maintindihan kung paano sila magtatrabaho kung ganito. Ang House of Representatives ngayon ay nagtataka kung paano ba, nagbago na ba yung rules, nagbago na ba yung mga patakbo natin kagaya ng sa mga nakaraan. It is a rule that is contained in the Constitution. And so, I'm afraid all these events that we have been witnessing has thrown the Senate and its leadership into the whole Senate into disarray. It has discredited the leadership, and it has stopped the essential business of legislation in government. The two other departments continue to work. The executive continues to work. The judiciary continues to work. Why does the legislation decide? Why does the legislature decide to stop working? The legislature is now in disarray. But that is exactly the opposite from what we are trying to achieve. We are trying to achieve some form of stability so that people can get on with their lives, so that people can plan ahead for their future, so that people can count on the assistance of government during this time of an emergency. And we cannot do that if the legislature decides to stay at home and have a vacation. That is anathema to everything that governance is about. I never imagined in my entire life, never mind my entire political life, that such a thing could happen, especially to the august, it's no longer august now, but to the august body of the upper house, the Senate of the Philippines. It's a very sad situation to have to watch. The country is in need of assistance. People are in need of assistance. How can we provide that assistance without the proper legislation to back it up? That is my problem here, looking at from the side of the executive. Yeah. We're examining all our options. We're looking at the law, we're looking at the Constitution, and to see how we can remedy the situation. But it requires the cooperation and the commitment of the Senate leadership to continue with their work. Otherwise, the executive is co-equal only to the legislature. We cannot tell them what to do. We cannot punish them for what they are doing. They have to regulate themselves. And they haven't been doing much of a good job right now.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, Malacañang is standing by the Senate's latest leadership shakeup, saying the election of Senator Sherwin Gatchalian as acting Senate President followed due process and the rule of law. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said the executive branch respects the chamber's internal decisions and recognizes the new majority's choice of leadership.
Ang nangyari sa Senado ngayong hapon ay naaayon sa batas at rule of law. Kinikilala at nirerespeto ng palasyo ang desisyon ng bagong mayorya at ang liderato ni Acting Senate President Sherwin Gatchalian.
Gatchalian was elected during Wednesday's session after minority senators, joined by Senator Francis Escudero, established a quorum and moved forward with legislative business. Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri was also elected chair of the Committee on Rules, while former Senate President Vicente Soto III administered Gatchalian's oath as the chamber's most senior member. The leadership shift comes after days of turmoil triggered by the arrest of Senator Jinggoy Estrada and the absence of members of the former majority bloc led by Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, which forced the cancellation of several sessions.
Dateline Malacañang.
In the meantime, a block of senators who elected Senator Sherwin Gatchalian as Senate President pro tempore and acting Senate President on Wednesday insisted that Senator Alan Peter Cayetano is no longer the chamber's leader, saying the Senate adjourned sine die with a new lineup of officers and committee heads. With 12 senators present, the chamber declared a quorum before Senator Vicente Soto III moved to declare all Senate leadership positions vacant. Senator Francis Escudero previously aligned with the majority, attended the session and helped meet the quorum threshold. In a statement, the Gatchalian-led bloc said the session was valid, citing the Avellino versus Cuenco ruling, which recognizes 22 senators as the base number for determining quorum. However, the group clarified that Gatchalian has not yet been elected Senate President, noting that the Constitution requires 13 votes for the post. Senator Cayetano, in a live-streamed response, rejected the legality of the session. He argued that 13 senators, a majority of all 24 members, are needed to conduct business and elect leaders. He said Avellino versus Cuenco does not apply because the Senate had adjourned on May 26 and was set to resume on June 1st, requiring a fresh roll call. Cayetano also disputed Gatchalian's designation as acting Senate President, saying no vacancy existed that would trigger succession under Senate rules. The leadership dispute leaves the Senate in a state of uncertainty as both sides assert competing interpretations of quorum, succession, and procedural authority.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is urging thousands of graduating college students in Manila to stay focused on finishing their degrees, as he led the distribution of 88.52 million pesos in educational assistance under the Presidential Scholars Program on Wednesday. A total of 4,426 scholars from Manila's 6 districts received 20,000 pesos each. Support, the president said, is meant to help students push through to graduation. In his speech to beneficiaries gathered at the Rizal Memorial Coliseum, President Marcos said once they receive their diplomas, they will meet again. The president cited 2nd Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM2 data, showing that nearly 29% of college students dropped out in 2025, stressing the urgency of keeping young Filipinos in school. President Marcos said the government is committed to helping more students complete their education, calling them the country's future workforce and leaders.
Dahil po nababahala kami, meron po tayong mga statistiko na nalalaman yung EDCOM, yung Commission on Education, yung pangalawa, noong 2025, halos 29% ng college student nag-drop out noong 2025. Napakasayang. Ito po ay mga malalapit na magtapos. Kaya't sa ngayon, sa halos 15,000 na po na barangay ang nabigyan ng suporta nitong programa na ito. Dito naman sa Maynila, mahigit 4,000, 4,000 ang magiging presidential scholar dito. At ito ay malaking bagay upang makatulong sa inyong edukasyon. At yan po ang aming magiging programa at tinitiyak po natin na ito ay mabilis bumaba at diretso po sa taong bayan. At hindi dumadaan-daan kung saan-saan pa. At sa inyo, tuloy-tuloy, galing sa national government, ang mag-distribute ang local government, mabilis ang pagtanggap ng ating mga mamamayan. Kaya yan po ang ating programang bawat bayan ay makikinabang. Idagdagan na rin natin ng bawat barangay ay makikinabang. Yan po ang ating programa. Nakakatiyak po ako na ang ating mga presidential scholar ay mag-aaral na mabuti. Pagsipagan ninyo ito at magkikita ulit tayo kapag may hawak na kayong mga diploma.
The scholars were selected from Manila's 896 barangays, with 5 graduating students identified from each village. Speaking to reporters, President Marcos said the assistance is part of the administration's ongoing Bawat Bayan Makikinabang program, which channels support directly to communities nationwide. The chief executive also signaled that funding for local governments may be increased if the program continues to show positive results. The 88.52 million peso package forms part of the Socio-Civic Projects Fund's Financial Assistance Program, which provides 200,000 pesos to every barangay. Marginalized families also receive 10 kilograms of rice under the initiative.
This is our continuing program sa bawat bayan ay makikinabang. We've done this before. We will continue to do it hanggang mabuo natin ang buong Pilipinas. Sa kasalukuyan, nakapag malapit na tayo sa 20,000 barangays na nabigyan ng tulong. Kaya halos kaunti na lang, kalahati na, mabubuo natin ito for the rest of the school year. So I'm very happy that it is going well, and kagaya ng aking sinasabi sa ating mga opisyal, pagka maganda talaga ang magiging resulta nitong programa ay sa pagsulat ng budget sa susunod na taon, susubukan natin, pipilitin natin na magiging mas malaki pa ang mabibigay natin sa mga local government officials.
That was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Wednesday formally received the credentials of 2 newly appointed ambassadors to the Philippines in separate ceremonies at Malacañang Palace. First to present her credentials was Ambassador Carmen del Rocio Azurin Araujo of the Republic of Peru, who becomes Peru's first resident envoy to Manila in more than 20 years following the reopening of the Peruvian embassy in 2025. President Marcos welcomed the development, calling the embassy's reopening an important landmark in the two countries' relations. He expressed confidence that Manila and Lima will deepen, strengthen, and widen cooperation in the years ahead. Ambassador Araujo conveyed the greetings of Peruvian President Jose Maria Balcazar and affirmed that the return of Peru's resident mission marks a significant milestone in their 52-year diplomatic relationship. She pledged to enhance bilateral engagement during her tenure. The President also accepted the credentials of Ambassador Maria Lourdes Bernadette Banson, the new Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, or SMOM. President Marcos expressed optimism that the Philippines and the Order of Malta will further expand cooperation in humanitarian and social programs, citing the Order's long history of service to vulnerable communities. Ambassador Banson relayed the warm greetings of Fra John Dunlap, Prince and Grand Master of the Order, and reaffirmed the Order's commitment to supporting humanitarian assistance, medical care, and disaster response in the Philippines. She also paid tribute to her late father, national artist for architecture Jose Maria Zaragoza, who previously served as the Order's ambassador to Manila. The Philippines and the Sovereign Military Order of Malta have maintained diplomatic ties for 61 years, with the Order active in humanitarian missions across more than 120 countries. Following the ceremonies, both envoys met with President Marcos at the study room to discuss bilateral relations and areas of mutual interest.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Wednesday welcomed members of the Philippine Robotics National Team to Malacañang, honoring their victories in major international robotics competitions in 2025 and 2026. During a courtesy call at Heroes Hall, the President congratulated the young innovators for showcasing world-class Filipino talent on the global stage. President Marcos urged them to keep pursuing their ideas despite challenges, saying breakthroughs often come from perseverance. The chief executive also encouraged the students to use their talent to develop technologies that uplift Filipino communities. The delegation presented live demonstrations of their award-winning projects, including Silax, an assistive mobility device for children with cerebral palsy; Tuklas, a robotic tool that helps archaeologists locate and document cultural artifacts; and Francis, an artificial intelligence or AI-powered companion robot designed for home assistance and emergency detection. President Marcos even tried operating Tuklas, interacting enthusiastically with the students as they explained their innovations. The Philippine Robotics National Team is the country's official delegation to global robotics competitions, composed of students as young as 7 who have excelled in events such as the World Robot Olympiad and the first Lego League. They were accompanied by officials of Felta Multimedia Incorporated, led by President and Chief Executive Officer Maylene Abiva, whose organization pioneered robotics education in Philippine schools more than 25 years ago. Student awardees came from schools across the country, including Batangas State University Integrated School, Toplink Global College, Dr. Yangas Colleges Incorporated, De La Salle Santiago Zobel, Legazpi City Science High School, Ibalon Elementary School, and Jubilee Christian Academy. President Marcos has been actively promoting robotics, AI, automation, and advanced technology education under the Bagong Pilipinas Digitalization Agenda, aiming to build a more innovative and globally competitive nation.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is marking Pride Month with a renewed call for equality and inclusion, saying no Filipino should ever feel unseen or unwelcome because of their identity or whom they love. In a statement Wednesday, the President underscored that members of the LGBTQIA+ community are entitled to equal protection, equal opportunity, and equal respect under the law, and that their contributions to nation building must be fully recognized. President Marcos said inclusion must be reflected not just in words but in policies, institutions, and everyday actions. The chief executive stressed that Pride Month should send a clear message. No Filipino should be forced to hide who they are to gain acceptance, and no one should feel invisible in a country they helped build. The President also highlighted the long-standing role of LGBTQIA+ Filipinos in public service, leadership, and various professions, saying their contributions form an essential part of the nation's story. President Marcos added that Pride Month honors generations of advocates who fought for dignity, recognition, and equality, and whose courage helped shape today's movement. While the Philippines is often seen as one of Asia's more socially accepting countries, Advocates continue to push for anti-discrimination legislation and stronger legal protections against gender and sexuality-based discrimination. The president urged Filipinos to move forward with compassion, respect, and courage, greeting the community with Mabuhay ang LGBTQIA+ community. Pride Month, celebrated every June, traces its roots to the 1969 Stonewall riots in the United States. In the Philippines, it has evolved into a major call for equal rights and visibility, highlighted by large community-led events such as the Metro Manila Pride March, and the Pride PH Festival.
Dateline Malacañang.
Also on Wednesday, Malacañang has declared 2 special non-working days this June, covering the province of Pampanga and the municipality of Santa Cruz in Laguna through separate proclamations signed by Acting Executive Secretary Ralph Recto on June 1st. Under Proclamation number 1280, June 15th has been designated a special non-working day in Pampanga to mark the 35th anniversary of the Mount Pinatubo eruption. The palace said the commemoration seeks to ensure that the lessons from the catastrophic 1991 eruption live on and are never forgotten. Mount Pinatubo's eruption, the second largest volcanic event of the 20th century, caused massive destruction across Pampanga, Zambales, Bataan, Tarlac, and Nueva Ecija. Meanwhile, Proclamation number 1281 declares June 4th a special non-working day in Santa Cruz, Laguna for the celebration of the Quezong Puti Festival, a cultural event honoring the town's famed native white cheese. Malacañang said both proclamations aim to give residents full opportunity to participate in the occasion and enjoy the celebration.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news Wednesday, House Assistant Majority Leader Zia Alonto Adyong defended the House of Representatives' decision to expel Cavite 4th District Representative Kiko Barsaga, saying the move was about accountability and decorum, not politics. The House on Tuesday adopted Committee Report number 298 of the Committee on Ethics and Privileges, which recommended Barzaga's expulsion for disorderly behavior, conduct unbecoming of a member of Congress, and violations of House rules. Speaking at the Kapihan sa Manila Bay Forum, Adyong rejected claims that Barzaga was targeted because of his perceived support for Vice President Sara Duterte, whose impeachment trial is set to proceed in the Senate. Adyong serves as the House's designated spokesperson for the impeachment trial. He said lawmakers are expected to uphold the dignity of the institution and the trust given to them by voters. Adyong stressed that public office is not a personal possession. Barzaga has been one of the most vocal critics of House leaders and the impeachment proceedings, frequently using social media and public statements to attack fellow lawmakers. Adyong said accusations of wrongdoing should be brought through proper legal channels, not through sweeping, unverified claims. He criticized what he described as Barzaga's repeated spread of unsubstantiated allegations. Adyong also pushed back against arguments that the disciplinary action violated free speech.
Dateline Malacañang.
Still at the House of Representatives has formally disciplined Quezon City 4th District Representative Jesus Bong Suntay over his controversial remarks about actress Ann Curtis Smith. In a vote of 263 to 8 with 7 abstentions, lawmakers adopted the Ethics and Privileges Committee's report finding Suntay guilty of disorderly behavior and violating the House Code of Conduct. The committee ruled that Suntay's comments during a March 3 impeachment hearing, along with related posts on social media, were inappropriate, sexist, and damaging to the dignity of the House. Under the approved sanctions, Suntay is reprimanded and must perform voluntary community service, undergo a gender sensitivity seminar, and issue a public apology to Ann Curtis Smith and to all women, to be delivered on television or broadcast media. The panel stressed that even though the remarks were stricken from the record, their impact remained. It added that offensive and sexually inappropriate language has no place in legislative proceedings. The report also found Suntay in violation of Republic Act or RA 6713, which requires professionalism, respect for others, and adherence to good morals and customs. During the committee hearings, Suntay admitted making the remarks and apologized to those offended.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, is preparing to file another case before the Office of the Ombudsman, this time involving what Secretary Vince Dizon describes as a big fish in the ongoing flood control controversy. Dizon declined to identify the respondents but confirmed the complaint will be filed Thursday in Bulacan Province. During the visit, Dizon said rehabilitation and flood management efforts in the creek follow the drainage master plan submitted by the Quezon City government. He added that residents have already reported improvements after months of continuous mitigation work. According to Dizon, recent flooding in the area has been lower and receding faster compared to previous years, but he cautioned that flooding will still occur, saying the immediate goal is to ensure water levels do not rise as high as before. Dizon also reiterated President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s directive to sustain rehabilitation efforts, saying the DPWH won't stop until long-term solutions are in place.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, Radyo Pilipinas World Service of the Presidential Broadcast Service can be heard over the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. Radyo Pilipinas World Service is also live on audio streaming. Just download Evox PBS Receiver on your Google Play Store or the App Store from your Apple phone. You can also visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just type in and search for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our post as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.